G'day, welcome back to the channel. I've got another letter from CAA. Now, if you have been keeping an eye on my community tab on this channel, you'll have already seen this letter, but I'm going to walk you through it for those who haven't. And I'm going to, some concerns that it raises with me, and I'm really worried now about CAA and the direction they have taken, and they're just lost. They have lost their way. So let's have a look here. It says, Mr. Simpson, and this is, by the way, this is signed by Mr. Dean Winter, the acting executive. So here we go. As you may be aware, several aviation concerns have been received by the Civil Aviation Authority alleging you breached civil aviation rules while operating a remotely piloted aircraft. I couldn't help but be aware, could I? Because you have been investigating these things and sending me emails and asking me to incriminate myself. Of course I'm aware. Absolutely, of course I'm aware. Goes on to say, these ARCs have now been assessed by the CAA with the outcome provided for your information below. So what he's saying is we've investigated these complaints, and this is what we have found. Right, the first one, on or about the 20th of July, operating an RPA, that's a drone to you, in a public park wearing FPV goggles without a spotter. And that was the allegation. And the outcome was insufficient evidence of a regulatory breach, complaint closed with no further action. Okay, fair enough. Let's move on. The next one is that on or about the 21st of June, I was operating an RPA, or someone was operating an RPA in a public park, SD card. Now, I think that's the one, the video title, I found an SD card. And again, insufficient evidence of CAR breach, complaint closed with no further action. Someone was flying a remotely piloted aircraft in the park, but we don't know who. We don't know if they had a spotter. So that's the only outcome they could really come to. And then on or about the 26th of June, operating an RPA in a public park wearing FPV goggles without a spotter. Again, insufficient evidence of a breach. These videos, you can't tell if there's a spotter there or not. And certainly when I fly at the park, when it's necessary to preserve safety, I have a spotter. And so, you know, there's no proof otherwise. So these are all reasonable outcomes, you know, insufficient evidence, blah, blah. But the next one is something that concerns me deeply, because the allegation was operating an RPA in the yard of a property wearing FPV goggles without a spotter, and the date was the 29th of July 2020, and that was this video. So I'm going to fly this thing in breach of CAA 101.209 because I'm going to be flying FPV with my goggles without a competent observer, without any observer. Here we go. We are flying around. So let's go around here. Let's go out here where I certainly could never see, even if I took my goggles, if I couldn't see this now. We're relying solely on the FPV camera on the quadcopter. The video where I deliberately set out to break the rules, break the regulations. In fact, I admit to it, I confess to it, I even quote the exact rule of regulation that I'm breaking. I provide 2 camera angles so you can see there is no spotter. You can see me flying, in fact, beyond visual line of sight, because I fly around the house where I'm no longer in. Even if I didn't have goggles, I couldn't see anything, and if there was a spotter, they couldn't see anything. A blatant and egregious breach of the regulations, an admitted to breach, a confession of a breach. So the CAA's finding of insufficient evidence of a rule breach, I don't know where you go from there. That is clearly a lie. It's a patent lie. Now, why did they have this finding? Why did they not choose to take action? Well, I think we all know why that is, because if they took that case to a court before a judge, the judge would laugh them out of the courtroom and probably castigate them for wasting the court's time, because there was zero risk associated with that flight. It was my own yard. There was no person in danger. I flew it into my head, and I didn't even, draw blood because it was a tiny little drone. So CAA should have found in this case evidence of a regulatory breach, but there was no risk to personal property, therefore no enforcement action will be taken. That's what they should have had in this little box here, not insufficient evidence. That is a lie. It's a bald-faced lie. There was plenty of evidence. I provided the evidence. And this worries me a lot, and I'll tell you why. Because this sets a very, very nasty precedent. Now, if someone can confess to breaking the rules, if someone can provide all the evidence that you need to prove that they break the rules, and CAA considers that insufficient, then what's going to stop idiots from doing stupid things and thinking, hey, they can't get me, because even if I confessed, even if I am in the video and you can see it happening, it's still not enough evidence. They've already determined that. If someone is perhaps prosecuted by CAA and it goes to court, they can quote this. They can say, look, Why is it now sufficient evidence for me to be seen in a video, but in this case, it wasn't sufficient evidence? In this case, this guy who admitted that he'd done it, they found was, even the admission was insufficient evidence. This sets a very nasty precedent. And what they've done is they've opened the door here to some stupidity because they can't be honest. They need to be honest. They should have said a breach of CAR was found, but no further enforcement action taken due to the very low level of risk or the negligible risk involved. But of course, perhaps they couldn't say that because then people would be thinking, oh, I can break the rules as long as I don't create a risk. So really, I did back them into a corner here. They were between a rock and a hard place, but they chose to take the option of lying rather than being honest, even if that honesty was inconvenient. And you can't deal with an organisation that's willing to lie, tell bald-faced lies to avoid facing up to the fact that the regulations they're enforcing and their policies for enforcement are not satisfactory. Lies are not good enough. If they're going to lie here, how can a judge be sure they're not going to be lying in a court before them if someone takes a case to court? They've proven they're willing to perjure themselves to protect themselves. That really, seriously, Dean Winter, you have a serious problem when you are prepared to tell lies to protect yourself. That is just totally not acceptable. Anyway, let's move on. So here we have another one. Operating RPA in a park wearing FPV goggles without a spotter on the 1st of October. Insufficient evidence. Now, we have another one. I'll deal with those ones first. Now, look, we've had all these complaints from person or persons unknown, allegations here, and they all seem to follow a theme. Someone doesn't like me flying FPV with allegedly without a spotter. But these are all based on videos. Nobody, as far as I'm aware, has ever complained on the spot. No one has ever been there when I've flown and complained about my flying. No one has felt threatened by my flying. No one has felt like they've been endangered by my flying. All we've got is people watching videos, or people or person watching videos and trying to make my life a misery by complaining about alleged technical breaches of the rules without any risk to personal property. And this means, as I alleged, the CAA's anonymous complaint system has been weaponized. It's so easily weaponized. It's been weaponized to waste CAA's time and to make my life a misery. And that is not good enough. And I complained about that, and CAA were unwilling to do anything about it. But let's go on, because this is a good one as well. On or about April and November 2019, operating an RPA in close proximity to a manned aircraft. Now, that's the allegation. But what is the rule that's supposed to have been broken? There is no rule. There is no rule in Part 101 that says you can't operate an RPA in close proximity to a manned aircraft. No rule at all. So, why are they even bothering to investigate that? Now, maybe they thought there was endangerment, because there is rules, you're not allowed to endanger manned aircraft, but there was no endangerment. So they found, as is the case with all the others, insufficient evidence of a regulatory breach because no one was endangered. So we've got 6 complaints here. None of them, well, I think one of them has, certainly it should be. This one here, I should have been found to have been breaching the regulations. And they should have been honest and said, the risk was so low, we're not going to take any further action. But they didn't choose to be honest. And then this bit really makes me laugh. I would like to draw to your attention that on 6 separate occasions, in fact, it's more than 6, because there were allegations before this, remember, members of the public or the aviation community have alleged that you have not operated your RPA within CARs. Well, yes, I know that. I think you should be reminded of this. In fact, that should read, I would like to draw your attention to the fact that on 6 separate occasions, members of the public have filed specious complaints against you using our easily weaponized anonymizing complaints system. Now, this is not my problem. This is CAA's problem. If you're going to provide a system where people can anonymously file specious complaints against someone they don't like, then you're going to be wasting a hell of a lot of time and coming up with a hell of a lot of these insufficient evidence conclusions. Even if I confess again, it's still not going to be enough evidence. So why are you wasting your time investigating this stuff, especially when you are at the same time complaining you don't have enough money to carry out the tasks assigned to you by government? You've been going to the government cap in hand, we need more money. Well, yes, perhaps if you spent your money wisely and didn't waste it on investigating ridiculous complaints like this from people who weren't even there, just watching videos on YouTube, then perhaps you would have a better chance of doing what you need to do within your budget. Now, this also is kind of annoying. It says, although in these instances the CAA will Excuse me. Although in these instances the CAA will not be taking any regulatory enforcement action, I would like to take the opportunity to remind you of your obligations under the regulations. Well, Dean, shut up. I know my obligations under the regulations. I know them better than you. I know the rules better than your damn investigators, who don't even realise that a shielded operation doesn't require permission from an airport or airfield within a 4-kilometre radius. They didn't know that. No. And they didn't know that drones and model aircraft are governed by exactly the same rule set. I know more about your rules than your investigators do. Don't go lecturing me on my obligations. And besides which, from this point forward, my sole obligation is to fly safely, not to endanger people or property. Your rules, as we've seen, even you don't think they're worth enforcing because you have taken no action in this case here. In this case here, you found insufficient evidence. So you're admitting your own rules are, in some instances, just not worth enforcing, okay? And that's always been my allegation. I've said to you, some of these rules are crap and you need to make it clear what the policy is, but you haven't, although you have now. Obviously, the policy is, if there's no risk, we're going to find insufficient evidence. Thank you for that. But the problem is you've done it in such a disingenuous way that it empowers people to do bad things in the understanding that there may not be repercussions, that there should be. You have weakened CAA's position, and I criticise you so strongly for that, because good rules are important. Good rules are essential. I'm not an anti-rule guy. I'm an anti-bad rule guy, and I'm not an anti-authority guy. I'm an anti-abusive authority guy. I think a lot of the rules, 99% or 95% of the rules we have for drones and model aircraft are very good rules and should be followed at all times. But there are some rules that just go too far and serve no purpose other than to unreasonably restrict the freedoms of people, such as preventing them from flying toys in their garden. And the other thing is, if we look here, look at all these allegations. Flying without a spotter, flying without a spotter, flying without a spotter, flying without a spotter. Now, has there been any injury? Has there been any damage to property? Have there been any complaints from people actually there at the time? No, there haven't. I think this kind of conclusively proves that operating an RPA in a public park wearing FPV goggles without a spotter is a pretty safe thing. If all this is true, where are the bodies? Where are the injuries? Where is the broken property? There isn't any. The risk associated with sensibly operating an RPA in a public park wearing FPV goggles without a spotter is very, very, very low. It's lower than the risk of flying a manned aircraft and being hit by another manned aircraft in this country. Something you guys should be looking into because it happens far too often. Deal with the real problems, Dean, not the people flying their toys in a park. Right. What more can I say? I don't think I can say much more. I'm going to do another video because I know there's been a few people who have been griping and grizzling, you shouldn't be poking the bear and what are you doing, and leave it to the national model flying organisations around the world to deal with this. I'm just going to do one more video in which I put my position, and I'm going to answer some of the comments. Some of the comments left on my video is very interesting. Now, I don't always agree with comments, but I always agree with people's rights to have their say. I'm a principled person. Freedom of speech is paramount to me. I was most disappointed when I think it was LEP posted a comment saying, basically criticising me and so forth, saying, you'll probably delete this comment. No, I never delete comments unless they are spam, commercial spam, or unless they are potentially defamatory, they're being unreasonably rude or using extreme profanity. Other than that, you can say whatever you like. I'm a big boy. I've got my big boy pants on. I'm not CAA. I'm not going to go running to my mother and hide behind her apron. I can take it on the chin. You can say whatever you like about what I do, and I'm happy to accept all criticism. Because if you don't accept criticism, you can't get a full and proper picture of where you sit in the world. So yeah, if you want to criticize me, go for it. But do not suggest for one moment that I will be deleting comments that I don't agree with. That is not my style. I never do that. Freedom of speech is right up there with freedom to fly, as far as I'm concerned. There you go. Thank you to my Patreon supporters. Thank you to all the others who have been supporting me through this. And I'm hoping, well, you can see I'm making a difference. I am making a difference. And as I say, one more video to come on that, but flight videos coming up. We had a weekend, no crashes to speak of. It was terrible. Just flying. So you just have some positive, fun flying videos coming up pretty shortly on this channel. In the meantime, thanks for watching. Bye for now.